What is going on, everybody? I am back today to talk about the newest release from A24, and this is not an A24 archive video, but this is a new A24 film that just came out recently that I have to be honest, when I first saw the initial trailer for it, I had zero interest to watch this movie whatsoever. The trailer looked super cringeworthy. I'm a huge fan of musicals and musical theater, and even though it had that element to it, which is unique for A24, there was something about the performances in the trailer that didn't really draw me in, and I finally got around to seeing it despite my hesitation. And the movie I'm going to be discussing today is Dix the Musical. Dix the Musical is directed by Larry Charles. Two self-obsessed businessmen discover they're long-lost identical twins and come together to plot the reunion of their eccentric divorced parents. So, as I said, the trailer did not give me any real interest to want to watch this movie, but produced by A24, I do an A24 archive video segment. I'm gonna watch all these movies eventually. I figured since it was a new release, I'd just watch it right out of the gate to get an idea of what I was working with. And we've got a contender for one of the worst movies I have ever seen in my life, and hands down one of the worst films of the year. And that is coming from someone who loves musical theater. This is just lowest common denominator, one of the laziest screenplays I've seen all year. The humor is so forced and cringeworthy. The performances are atrocious, and that's saying a lot considering the fact that Nathan Lane is in this movie, who is really the only person saving any of the scene time. And I'm going to break it down in detail when I talk about the plot of the film. So at the beginning of the film, we're introduced to Craig and Trevor, who both work at the same company but somehow have never run into each other or spoken to each other before. They work for a company that sells the supplies for like Roomba vacuum cleaners, not the actual vacuum cleaners themselves, which they play really heavily into as a punchline for a joke, but it doesn't really work all that well. And they go to work every day, and their boss is played by Megan Thee Stallion. She says they're her two best businessmen and they work so well together. Well, the two of them start to talk and they're competitive with one another. Well, shortly after, they find out that they are twin brothers who their parents separated right after they were born. They've never met each other, and their parents are played by Nathan Lane and Megan Mullally. And the entire film is essentially like a Parent Trap movie. They're trying to bring their parents back together so that they can have some form of normal family life together once again. So, as I said, one of the worst movies of the year and one of the worst movies I have ever seen in my entire life, and that is not an exaggeration whatsoever. This was miserable. It was like an hour and 28 minutes, and I was just counting the seconds until it was over. First off, the performances. The two lead actors are trying so hard in this movie to be funny, and it is so forced and unfunny and really just cringeworthy in most moments. They're two gay actors, which we're told at the very beginning of the film, that are playing heterosexual men, and obviously this type of a musical is trying to be as satirical as possible, but it's not clever satire. It almost reminded me of like Family Guy, just really blunt, ignorant humor that's trying to gross out an audience, which it's really funny because I mentioned this in my review, and I thought that it would be interesting to do a compare and contrast. There are so many amazing queer artists out there who make art, make movies, make music that are putting a lot into the world. And there's obviously a ton of genres that queer artists fit themselves into. But when you look at extreme queer cinema, as far as like gross out humor and absurdity, we always go back to the great John Waters, who I am a huge fan of. I absolutely love John Waters, and a lot about John Waters' aesthetic in the time period that he was active in was essentially looking at conservatives and saying, hey, if you think I'm disgusting and you think I'm gross, I'll give that to you in tenfold back in your face. And it's a really empowering form of cinema. But even though he has gross out humor in his movies, he also writes incredibly intellectual, thought-provoking films that are a commentary on our society. And so there's a balance between the two. You get absurd, gross out humor that makes you laugh, but you also get this really thoughtful commentary, and he's just one of the best to ever do it. When you look at a movie like this, the commentary that tries to exist twists is so overblown and so hit you in the head with a hammer that it's not interesting. There's like an entire song in this about like getting what you want, and like they make jokes about like roofing people, and it's clearly trying to be satirical, but it's just not funny. When you think about who's watching this movie, I've said this before a lot of times, if you're trying to make a statement to someone, preaching to the choir is not really doing you any good. Most of the people who watch this movie are not going to be conservative. So if you're doing this satirical numbers that you think are going to be like, oh man, I'm really poking fun at these groups of people and it's going to be really hilarious, when the audience is the people who already understand that and get it, it's not really adding any humor. It's just annoying. And that's what this movie is. The one word I have for it is annoying. The jokes in this are so stupid and they're so poorly executed that they don't understand comedic timing, which is something that is so important in a comedy film, is understanding comedic timing. And this film is just the most overblown, try to gross you out. There's like flying vaginas in this. There's all kinds of stuff, which in theory, if it's handled well, I'll find it really hilarious, but it's not. Like I said, Nathan Lane is the standout in this movie. It's unfortunate that he involved himself in this absolutely horrible project, especially after doing Beau is Afraid earlier this year and giving a phenomenal performance in that movie. His performance cannot save this from just being absolutely miserable. Megan Mullally plays probably the most annoying character in a film the entire year. Every time she was on screen, I don't know what kind of persona that she was going for, but if she was going for a Waters era, like Mink Stole character, or like a Edith Massey character, just really overblown, it didn't work. It was just really obnoxious in every single way. And the music in this wasn't any good. I was hoping to at least have some songs in this that were really memorable, that I would find charming or entertaining in one way or the other. And it was just grating. It just added to it being miserable. And I just really don't have a lot to say about this because it's just downright awful. It is a complete waste of time. This is in contention for one of the worst films A24 has ever made. I'm watching A24's entire archive right now, and I'm about 50 films into it, and this movie is just abysmal. I would skip this 100%. Even if you're a fan of musical theater, you're not going to get much out of this. Unless you're into like Family Guy, really dumb, overblown humor, then you might find something to appreciate, but I just found this movie to be very grating and irritating. So have you seen Dicks the Musical? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Leave me a comment down below. Let me know what you thought. I thought this movie was horrible. There is not anything positive that I have to say about this movie. Nothing at all, other than Nathan Lane tried. As always, if you can like the video and subscribe to the channel, helps me out a lot and lets me know the type of content you're looking for. I'm always putting out new material and look forward to getting more out for you in the near future. And as always, everyone, thank you so much for watching and have a great rest of your day.